3 years ago. That was the time I was moving to Manila, and the Apostolic Nuncio gently recommended that I avoid long plane trips. And he said, it's difficult to look for another archbishop before someone is installed. Yeah. So here we are. The theme of the gathering is the challenge of the new evangelization, evangelization in the 21st century, especially to the ordained, to the priests. What I intend to do this morning is to use the biblical image which the Synod of Bishops on the new evangelization utilized for its message to the people of God. The biblical narrative that was chosen contains a lot of elements about evangelization and about ourselves as evangelizers in need of being evangelized ourselves. And we are all familiar with the story. The encounter between Jesus and the woman of Samaria. This encounter happened at the well, Jacob's well in Sychar. And there was a conversation that began with Jesus asking for a drink. Then the conversation evolved into worship on this mountain or that mountain. And then even the husband, call your husband. And he said, I don't have any husband. I said, yes, you have had 5. And the one you're living with now is not your husband. So from water, give me to drink. The conversation moved from one area to another, and then came the question of the woman, are you a prophet? And then, are you the Christ? And the story ended with the woman spreading the good news. In her town, I have seen the Messiah. And the people begged Jesus to stay for another 2 days. He obliged. And after 2 days, the residents of the place said to the woman, at first we believed on the power of your word. Now we believe because we have seen, we have heard. And even if it is not part of the story anymore, I think what happened to the woman happened also to those other residents. They must have run to the other villages proclaiming the encounter with the Messiah. A simple story that contains a lot of elements, of course not exhaustive at all, elements about evangelization in the 21st century and the demands or the challenges to us. Let me share with you a few points, and then we will open the floor to some questions. Of course, you are not forced to ask questions. Only if there is a need to clarify things. I really do not know where I am and what time of the day or night it is. But we will try. So the first point that I would like to develop is Jesus being described as a weary, thirsty, and tired traveler. He sat down at Jacob's fountain or well at the 6th hour. Jesus is presented as an ordinary traveler. We know he is the one sent by God. But he is described in this episode as an ordinary traveler, just like any other traveler. He gets tired, he gets weary, just like many other brothers and sisters journeying through life. He was a at the well already when the woman comes, as though waiting for the woman to come. And the woman meets a tired, thirsty, weary traveler. In an ordinary well, this ordinary person encounters an ordinary woman at the 6th hour. And that was not the only day where the 6th hour was registered. It was an ordinary day at an ordinary hour. Now, this is the first point in our reflection. The image of Jesus as a weary traveler is that of someone fired up to do mission. Individual missionaries, the ones mentioned by Cardinal Tagle in his homily this morning, the disciple missionary. Looking at Jesus, the disciple missionary in our time needs to be a co-traveler, a co-journeyer with the many people who experience tiredness and weariness in their pilgrimage of life. And there are many of them. And I think no one among us can say, in our own journeys, no one can say that we have not experienced tiredness, weariness, and thirst, hunger. We all have experienced such moments. And those moments qualify us to be co-journeyers with people. This is a far cry from the image of a triumphal conqueror, the evangelizer who comes to conquer the infidels. No, in the 21st century, the conqueror cannot evangelize. It is the humble person who walks with others. Yeah. That's the first challenge to all of us. Do we journey with people? And journeying with people emphasizes the, people might call it old-fashioned, but it is the primal experience of evangelization in the gospel, which is from one person to another person. That's how the evangelization began. And that's how evangelization should continue and progress. Programmatic here is the first letter of St. John. What we have seen with our eyes, heard with our ears, and touched with our hands regarding the Word of God, we in turn proclaim to you, person to person. That's how Jesus did it. He met a woman, a Samaritan woman at the well. He entered the house of Zacchaeus. He called John, James. He called Peter and Andrew. He allowed the woman of ill repute to bathe his feet with her tears. Persons. While structures and institutions are important, evangelization usually happens in a deep manner when a person encounters another person. In my first diocese, I did not have an office, a room that one could call an office. And I was questioned, Bishop, why don't you have an office? I said, I do. Where? Wherever I am. Wherever I am, I can encounter people. And so I hold office there. And besides, I tell them, if I have a room that is comfortable, spacious, I might be tempted to stay there. And that's the end of my traveling, journeying with people. Yeah. Okay. A companion on the journey. We have to go back to that simplicity. We always say that our generation is marked by individualism. While there is much to lament about individualism, there is also an opportunity. Individuals are waiting for the good news. So encounter individual persons. It is not enough to tackle institutions. Personal encounters, relationships matter. And here, the encounter, the simple encounter, some people might even call it a chance encounter, happens at a well. And Jesus had been there already before the coming of the woman. Now, as a companion of people in their journey, we are asked in the new evangelization, do we know the wells that people frequent when they are tired and weary? In a seminar for lay leaders in one of the parishes in Manila, I asked this question. There was a big group of young people, and I asked them, do not be afraid. Tell us, what wells do you go to when you feel bored, tired? And they mentioned places. I did not know any of them. Really, I did not know them.
Like what?
But most of them were computer, internet cafes. But I did not know them. I said, wow, what type of a co-journeyer am I? I do not know the wells that young people visit. And I saw the reaction of the parents who were there. They were getting nervous because they also did not recognize those wells. Then I asked the husbands and wives, when your husbands grow weary, where do they go? What wells do they visit? Do you know? Many of them do not know. I see some men and women there. You better ask your husbands, where do you go? And husbands, do you know where your wives go? When they are tired and weary, I'm sure they go to the adoration chapel. And I ask ourselves, my brother bishops, do we know the wells that our priests visit? I love to know. I love to know. But I'm sure they are also curious. Where do the bishops go? Where do the bishops go? Where do we throw water?
All right.
Adoration chapel. Of course, where else? Where else will we go? We can have a good laugh over this, but it can be disturbing because Jesus was present at the well before the coming of the woman. So I told the wives, if you know the wells frequented by your husbands, go there earlier. So if your husband goes to a beer garden, be there and welcome him. Let's have a date. That's the last time you will go to that well. Be there, be there. That's the evangelizer. Meet the persons there. But do we know where to go?
Sa bahay ng Camila, patay.
But who will know where to go? Only those who journey with the flock. And the Synod on the new evangelization also challenged us. You are there at the wells in order to help people discern also whether the water that they are drawing from those wells is safe and really good for them. Because different types of water are being proposed to people to quench their tiredness and their thirst, but they often poison people. So a humble mode of doing evangelization, that of a companion in the journey. That makes us, this image makes us also enter our own journeys, and from our own experience draw waters of compassion, understanding towards our brothers and sisters. In a retreat for lay people, during one of the discussions and sharing, a woman asked her companions for some guidance. She said that she, at every retreat, she made resolutions to be more patient, to be more understanding, but her patience, especially towards people who help in the house, like the cook or the laundry woman, her patience is very short. So I asked her why. She said, well, it's like the cook, she says. I give her instructions and she forgets. And that makes me impatient. But I asked her, are you a grandmother already? Yes. Do you remember all the names of your grandchildren? No. Now your memory also fails you. So you should be the one to understand her. When she forgets, you should be able to tell her, don't worry. We are companions in forgetfulness. You forget my instructions. I forget the names of my grandchildren. Don't worry. Don't be afraid. I understand you. There was a young boy who expressed his appreciation to his grandfather. Said, Grandpa, you are advanced in age, but you are still romantic. I heard you calling Grandma darling. How romantic. And the grandfather said, yes, I call her darling because I have forgotten her name. So, we are all travelers, co-travelers in this journey towards forgetfulness. So let us accompany each other in understanding and compassion. Let me move on. The second point is the place where the encounter happened. The fourth chapter of St. John identified the place as Sychar, the town of Sychar in Samaria. We know that this area was enemy territory. The Jews and the Samaritans had nothing that they held in common. But Jesus passes by, he sits there, and he even stays for a few days. Now, this is an important element in evangelization. Aside from the stance of being a co-journeyer, a humble co-journeyer, mindful of my own journey, seeing my own journey in the journey of other people, eliciting from me compassion and understanding. Here we find another element. The Synod of Bishops reminds us that while we have to sustain the faith life of our friends, those already evangelized, we should go to what we call, in quotation marks, enemy territory. Yes, the world, the contemporary world, has its problems and contradictions. Nobody denies that. If the church looks at the world, it's like looking at Samaria. And often, some people do not want the church to be stained by the world. They want a church that is pure, a church without any blemish, and so don't have anything to do with the world, for the world is evil. The world will contaminate you. But part of evangelization is this. Yes, as we recognize the sinfulness and the contradictions in the world, we continue to believe that this world is still God's creation. This world came from God and continues to be recreated by God. God has not disappeared from this world. It is in this world that Jesus, the Son of God, became human. It is in this world that He taught, that He ate, that He died. It is in this world that He rose from the dead. And this world benefits from the tempest called the Holy Spirit. We should not lose sight also of the goodness of this world. While we are not blind to the sins of the world, do we see the presence of God in this world? Do we see the presence of God and the enlivening Spirit in this broken world? New evangelization challenges us to look at the opportunities for the good news present in this broken world. Just to give you an example, migration. Cardinal Mahoney, I think, will have a workshop on migration. Migration inflicts a wound on the home country and often also on the receiving country. And migration is a cause of so many political, economic battles. Next week, I will be giving a talk in the Vatican on, and you might give me some input during lunch or the coffee break. They asked me to develop the topic diaspora communities, cooperation between diaspora communities for world peace and the development of countries. But migration, it really inflicts wounds on peoples. Like in the Philippines, we call them the new heroes and heroines because of the millions of dollars that they're able to send. And because of the money that the overseas workers send to the country, the schools are alive, the shopping malls are alive. The GDP rises mainly due to the contributions of migrants. But you also see the pain. There was an informal study done by some people in Catholic schools. They discovered that many of our children who have emotional and learning difficulties come from families with one or both parents away.